Jack, do you want me to start prayers?
Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We'll start with opening prayers. Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Teacher, foe destroyer, thus gone, fully and perfectly awakened Buddha, endowed with knowledge and good conduct, gone to bliss, knower of the world, helmsman of ordinary beings to be tamed, supreme one, teacher of all gods and men, Buddha, foe destroyer, glorious victorious one, Shakyamuni, to you I pay homage, make offerings, and go for refuge. Teacher, foe destroyer, thus gone, fully and perfectly awakened Buddha, endowed with knowledge and good conduct, gone to bliss, knower of the world, helmsman of ordinary beings to be tamed, supreme one, teacher of all gods and men, Buddha, foe destroyer, glorious victorious one, Shakyamuni, to you I pay homage, make offerings, and go for refuge. Teacher, foe destroyer, thus gone, fully and perfectly awakened Buddha, endowed with knowledge and good conduct, gone to bliss, knower of the world, helmsman of ordinary beings to be tamed, supreme one, teacher of all gods and men, Buddha, foe destroyer, glorious victorious one, Shakyamuni, to you I pay homage, make offerings, and go for refuge. When you, chief of humans, were born, you took 7 steps on this great earth, and you said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise at that time, I prostrate. Completely pure body, supremely fine form, ocean of wisdom like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, supreme protector, to you I prostrate. Endowed with the supreme marks, a face like the stainless moon, a color like gold, to you I pay homage. The 3 worlds are not like you, who is free from dust. Matchless one, endowed with knowledge, to you I prostrate. Protector, endowed with great compassion, omniscient teacher, field of ocean-like merits and good qualities, to the thus gone I prostrate. Through purity, free from attachment, through virtue, releases from the evil-gone realms, unique, supreme, ultimate meaning, to the Dharma that brings peace, I prostrate. From freedom, teaching the path, well abiding in the pure trainings, holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha also I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout, homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, and all aspects, the supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous action, accumulate virtue and goodness, subdue your own mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Like star, mirage, lamp, illusions, drops of dew, bubbles, dreams, lightning and clouds, look at all conditioned phenomena as such. Due to this merit, having attained the state of the all-seeing and thereby subduing the enemy of faults, may I liberate migrators from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Guru. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the positive potential I create by listening to the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the joyful happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from holding some close and others distant. Respectfully, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I confess all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the virtuous actions of all ordinary and noble beings. Please, Buddha, remain as our guide and turn the wheel of Dharma until samsara ends. Through the merit created by myself and others, may the two bodhicittas ripen, and may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. This offering I make of a precious jeweled mandala, together with other pure offerings and wealth, and the virtues we have collected throughout the 3 times with our body, speech, and mind. O my masters, my yidams, and the 3 precious jewels, I offer all to you with unwavering faith. Accepting these out of your boundless compassion, please send forth waves of your blessings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Naratayami. The Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain on Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on and up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on and up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha Tayata gate gate. Tayata gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan.
I'm going to just jump in here for a second to remind people that have joined us since the announcement that the session is being recorded, and that by participating, you're agreeing to be recorded. But if you don't wish your video to be seen or your voice to be heard, please mute your microphone and turn off your video. Your presence will be recorded in either case, and chat will also be recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk, and thank you, Susan. And thank you everyone for being here. My name is Jack, and yeah, it's interesting being on this platform. I see Matthew. Hi, Matthew. Yeah, it's so interesting being on this platform. It's a little bit, in some ways, more nerve-wracking than being with you all in person. You know, nerves about like making sure that the internet's working right and that y'all can hear me. Please just make sure and interrupt if something goes on with the volume or whatever. Just go ahead and interrupt me. So I am a student of Lama Jinpa's, and I have been for about a little over 1.5 years now, but I've been going to the temple for about 2 years. I currently live in Washington, so I am coming to you from pretty far away. And this morning I'm going to be giving a talk on social justice and Buddhism and kind of the ways that they intersect and can work together. I'm not an expert, but I do have some experience in social justice movements. I've worked with the movement for Black Lives, also known as Black Lives Matter. I've also done some work with the unhoused population and also people who are precariously housed, so like tenants' rights. And I have also worked in movements that the aims are for generally alternatives to capitalism, as well as the criminal justice system. So that's kind of my personal background, and I'm going to be applying my lived experience in those realms, as well as some things that we are all learning in our Buddhist training and ways that that can inform us on how we can move forward to a more socially just world. And as some of you know, there is that enlightened society known as Shambhala. And it's, it's this kind of ideal realm where people are capable of exploring the Dharma, learning the Dharma without obstruction. And so this is kind of the world that we are aiming for, but also it involves a secular world too. We're not evangelicals. We're not trying to change everybody to become Buddhists. And that's actually really important. We acknowledge and integrate all ideas. So before I officially get started, I do want to acknowledge where I'm standing now. So right now I'm at Mount Rainier. I took a little vacation, which is nice. And this is the native lands of the Nisqually, Puyallup, Cowlitz, Squaxin Island, Muckleshoot, and Yakima peoples. And where I am living in Brennan, where I live permanently, is the Coast Salish, Klallam, Suquamish, Chwana, and Skokomish people. And in Sacramento, where you all are at, you're living on the lands of the Nisenan people. And then in the surrounding areas is the Patwin, Miwok, Maidu, Koyam, and Washoe. So does anyone want to give it a shot? Maybe, why do people think that I started with a land acknowledgement? Why would I talk about the native peoples of these lands? I'm going to be asking you to jump in every once in a while. I like involvement. It also takes some of the pressure off of me. So please jump in every once in a while. But does anyone want to give that a shot?
We were the original inhabitants. Actually, I say we, but I'm actually inhabiting. I'm half Cree, and I'm actually inhabiting land that is not from my people. So I'm in an interesting position.
Yeah.
I lost the
So
again.
I think it's important that we acknowledge that where we live didn't always belong to us and isn't the way it's always been, that things change and are in flux.
Yeah, thank you, Marie.
Hi, this is,
go ahead.
Hi, this is Betty. I think by doing a land acknowledgement, we're acknowledging the continuity of the peoples and their culture. So it's not just a thing of the past, it exists today, and we're in it, and it's a part of Shambhala.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Acknowledging the past and also acknowledging, there's been a lot of harm that's been done to the native peoples here. And so recognizing that, taking accountability for that is really important for moving forward. So as we all know, we're living in extremely challenging and political times. So COVID-19, this, it has revealed a lot of inadequacies in our culture, this highly individualized culture, where wearing a mask is seen as an affront to personal liberties. And also, a person's right to live healthily is impacted by their ability to stay employed, to get insurance. And as always, these challenges impact people of color more immensely. And that's coming out with this national reckoning around race that has been happening the last few months, in which, people of color, particularly Black Americans, are treated so differently than white Americans. And it's this history that keeps coming back. And another reason why, I did the land acknowledgement is that there's this history that continues to come back to us, where it's very evident that we have not healed those deep wounds that come from colonialism, slavery. And then behind all of this, there's the devastating impacts of a warming climate. And all of you, most of you are in Sacramento. You are experiencing this firsthand, where you're breathing in the impacts of climate change for the last few weeks. So I say all of this not to bring us to despair. I really, really want to share that. This is not for us to despair, but it is to remind us that this is the reality of our current situation. And we have incredible opportunity to engage in the change to bring us closer to that vision of the enlightened world. So how do we move forward and do so in a way that's also influenced by our Buddhist training? So does anyone want to take a knack at, telling us what was the first truth of the Four Noble Truths? Does anyone know it? Just shout it out.
Life is suffering.
Yes. Yeah, the first truth of the Four Noble Truths is that there's suffering. So, even let's say we didn't have COVID, let's say all of the inequities around race and climate change, let's say that they weren't there, which, we can't, but let's say that they weren't there, we would still suffer, wouldn't we? There's still birth, old age, sickness, and death. Those things are just the truth of our existence. And this, this acknowledgement of that should not turn us towards nihilism. I think there's this kind of tendency to say, well, all of this is kind of screwed anyways. So what, should I do about it? Why should I do anything about it? Instead, I think what a recognition of suffering does or can do is allow us to connect. So it allows us to connect with other people's suffering. And then I think there's the added piece of, there's certain structures in our culture that heightens and increases suffering for certain parts of the population. And it also increases our delusion that we're separate. So, we can kind of think, what are ways that our culture is set up that increases separation and that increases suffering? So, today we have an underclass of people, and really it's basically a modern day caste system where there's people who receive more benefits and privilege, and it's to the detriment of a very large other set of people. And this doesn't have to also move us towards this kind of place of nihilistic guilt, right? Where, we live in one of the richest nations in the world. We have so much privilege, we have so much wealth. And I think people can oftentimes feel guilty about that, which really is a place of being stuck. So to move beyond feeling stuck, we again need to connect with our own suffering and recognize that we are suffering and other people are suffering. So how can we use our position of power, of privilege to support others? So after that, or maybe not after, but coinciding with that recognition of suffering, we have to start with ourselves. So in, social justice, movements and all this, we're moving towards helping others. And I think in Buddhism too, our purpose is to help others. But if we don't start with ourselves, we kind of get stuck. And so starting with ourselves means that for Buddhists, we're recognizing that we are not fixed identities. We're not fixed entities. So we recognize that as we see ourselves now, which we see ourselves as these kind of like permanent figures, and that also there's got to be like this essence somewhere, right? Like there's something that defines me. There's something that makes me who I am. It's devastating when we realize that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There is no essence. But what's incredible about that is that when we come to recognize that, we also recognize that we are completely and totally, utterly dependent on everything else. And so that leads us to that other side of that truth, which is that even though we don't exist, we also exist completely and utterly independent on everything else. And so I think that is also an incredibly hope-filled thing. And I think it also stirs us to action. So despite us not existing permanently as a permanent figure, we do exist in this world and we have responsibilities within it. And I think starting with ourselves also means that we acknowledge our lived experience. So I don't know, have you all ever heard Lama, talks to me a lot about we have to come to the Dharma with recognition of our own lived experience. So that means that we come to the Dharma, we come to social justice with our own positioning within this world, and the way that that positioning informs our interactions with people and informs our experiences. So with a social justice lens, we recognize that our place within the world is impacted by our family culture, our national culture, community culture, our race, gender, socioeconomic status, sexuality, all of these things, right? And all of those inform how we move through the world and how we are seen by others, and also seen by institutions of power that give us certain levels of privilege, financial privilege, healthcare, education, all the things. So with that acknowledgement, we can find ways to move forward responsibly with our privilege, with the goal of supporting others. So see how like Dharma and social justice, to me, they're basically the same thing. So the way, for example, I'll kind of give you an example from my own life. I'll speak about my lived experience and how it has helped me move towards connection by fully acknowledging who I am. So I am a queer, non-binary person. I'm white. I was raised female in this culture. I have a pretty high education level, and I'm middle class. So there's all these kind of different ways that I am moving through the world with these kind of different identities. People see me in different ways based on their own lived experience and position in the world. And I really had to come to acknowledge and accept who I was, especially around gender, which is kind of a recent acceptance for me within my life, where I realized that I wasn't female. And there was this whole process for me, life process of coming into myself. And it's kind of just now beginning. And I think what's so important about just being fully transparent with yourself about your own lived experience is that if you're not being transparent, if you're not being real with yourself, you end up not only harming yourself, which there was a lot of that against myself, but you end up harming others. So not being real with yourself and with who you are and with your lived experience in the world means that you end up harming others. I recognize that in myself, that when I was, just going through a lot of denial and refusal about my gender, was that I hated other people who were open and out with themselves and could be themselves, and what kind of pain that was causing myself, but also keeping me from connecting with others. So it was really important for me to fully accept myself. And I wonder, you don't have to share anything super duper personal like that, but I wonder, is there anyone who might be able to share like an example from their own life about, how this kind of maybe radical acceptance, some might call it, or just being transparent, recognizing who you are in the world has helped you connect? Does anyone be courageous and share a little bit?
I can say, if you can hear me,
Yes.
that I'm kind of a raging feminist, And it's, and it's something I just have to, that I don't really want to work on, because I see so much sexism in the world that I want to be able to say, this is my experience, that, I don't feel comfortable, I don't appreciate this being said, and all those kinds of things. But it's hard to do. It's very hard to do. And for me, especially when you were talking about, I had a question, really, because I look very feminine and I kind of am very feminine, but my brain is really masculine and my emotions are really masculine. So I kind of identify with both. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, when you said, you didn't feel feminine, what you meant about that, because I know you're using non-binary, and I think that's a fabulous term. I don't know if I could say dual binary or whatever, if that cancels itself out, but
yeah, thank you for saying that, and thank you for your bravery to say something. So it's funny because even conventionally, so ultimately gender doesn't exist, right? But even conventionally, gender does not exist. So gender is a social construct. There's biological sex, where we're born with certain body parts, right? And then, a certain label, she or he, is put on that person based on their body parts when they're born. But those constructs, those labels, those pronouns, that's all part of a huge, flux of behavior and actions and identity that doesn't actually even exist conventionally. So gender is a performance. It's kind of how we choose to approach the world and show people who we are. So I think actually all of us have all different ways of being masculine and feminine. And so however way you choose to identify is highly personal and individual. And it's funny because even biologically, all of us have different levels of testosterone and estrogen in our bodies. We're all on this incredible, fluid, dynamic, just what's the word? We're between two poles, I guess. So
Spectrum.
It's kind of fun. Susan, were you going to say something?
But I think spectrum was the word you were looking for.
Thank you.
Right. Let me go in another direction. One of the things, what I've recently acknowledged and experienced through being so alone, as we all have been during this COVID situation, and then a recent retreat that I did, a couple of retreats that I've recently done, I'm recognizing that I'm not real sure what love is.
Mm-hmm.
That is a whole arena of exploration and of understanding and of experiencing that maybe I thought I knew, but I don't actually. So that's going to be, how many of us really know what loving is?
Mm.
Not in a sentimental fashion, not in a romantic fashion, but in this fashion of the immeasurables. What is love in that respect? So that's something that I just recognized. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. That's cool. I hope you give a talk on that. I'm just throwing it out there. Yes.
Maybe.
Okay. All right, moving on. So,
can I just second that? It's Roberta. I completely.
Roberta,
Not only from a personal, definitely being divorced 3 times. I don't know what that kind of love is, but from Susan's perspective, absolutely. I don't think I get it either.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. Amazing. All right. So next in our, our search for justice and staying grounded in Buddhism, the next point that I wanted to bring up, which is very related to what we were just talking about, is interdependence. So we are not a self that is an island. We are ultimately interdependent with all others in our environment. Lama likes to say, we are the environment. So we are living, breathing interdependence. We're breathing in the ash of the forest, and we're breathing out these microscopic particles that have the potential to gravely harm others. We're in this world where we're constantly impacting each other, and where we're constantly, we don't have this boundary of a body that we feel that we have. And of course we do, but it's not in the sense of that it's permanent and we're not affecting others. So we really are all in this together, radically so. And that's difficult to acknowledge within a culture that just abhors and denies this truth constantly. So this culture really identifies, the need for support, for help, for connection, as weakness. And I think that comes out, in this example that I said earlier of, wearing a mask. We're wearing a mask because it's, we're trying to prevent illness and death in others. But in this culture, that can be seen as an affront to our personal liberties. Also, we live in a capitalist culture. So capitalism requires continual, constant growth, expansion, and economic crisis, in fact, to and the further destruction of the environment. We have to move, we have to, continually take down forests, and a reliance on slave wages and slave labor to maintain itself. Capitalism relies on those things in order to exist. So this, economic situation and also consumer culture, it really relies on the delusion that we are fixed. So our way of life as it is now is fixed, and our planet is permanent. We will always have enough resources to meet our demands. And those demands are themselves demands that come out of this illusion that we are separate from everyone else on this earth, and that our needs are, more important to everyone else's. So what are some ways that that you all see this kind of denial of interdependence play out? Where is this playing out in our culture in other ways? Anyone want to take a whack at it?
I think some pretty obvious ones are, well, just and two really topical ones are racism, for one, and then just the variety of responses to how we behave around COVID-19 and kind of taking care of each other in public and those sorts of things.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, and that actually does bring me into the next point. So, wrapped up with interdependence are the two truths. So the two truths, the relative world and the ultimate. So, this ultimate truth, nothing exists by way of its own nature. There are no essences, nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent. And yet this relative truth, we exist by way of interdependence. We're in the conventional world. We have our own lived experience. So on the topic of race, there's a lot of us here who are white, or maybe, we have, mixed racial background. And it's similar to the point of, what I was saying about gender, where, did you know that even on a conventional biological level, race does not exist. And yet, how differently we are perceived, positioned, and treated in this culture simply because of the color of our skin. So, you know, it's really important while we recognize that ultimately and even conventionally race doesn't exist, our lived experience, depending on the color of our skin, is so different. And so how do we move forward from this? You know, I don't have the answer, but there's things that we can do. We have to start learning more about this history, about the way that this culture divides us by race. We need to listen to people of color. We need to make changes. If you're in a position of power, you know, if you're in an institution, even if, you know, let's say you're a teacher or, you know, someone who has any position really, you know, trying to push for racial justice and policies within, you know, wherever you are. Join people of color in helping make their voices and needs heard. And, you know, as always, I think start with yourself too. So recognizing where we can grow in this way, recognizing where our blind spots may be, challenge yourself to listen to diverse voices. And even when you feel like accused, you know, that feeling of like, gosh, but I'm a good person. I don't want to hurt people. And yes, I know that I'm white, but I'm a good person. I don't want to hurt people. That's true. But also we need to recognize that, you know, when we feel accused, there's this kind of attachment to a self that also doesn't exist. So can we open ourselves to hearing those things that do feel very hard, you know, that we are part of a culture that separates people by race and that treats people differently by race and that treats Black people as disposable? Can we hear those things and not feel accused and instead move forward from that and really validate people's feelings, so that we can reach towards connection versus that separation that just continues? So I think this also leads me into, you know, it's really important that we recognize our own harm, so harm that we've received and also harm that we've participated in, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and to be accountable for those things. You know, as Buddhists for folks who have taken refuge, we take precepts, and those precepts are kind of these ethical guidelines that help us, you know, not harm ourselves and not harm others. And so that's one way that we can be accountable. And I was actually thinking about it recently, you know, what the precept of not consuming intoxicants. And I was thinking about, you know, what if we broadened our definition of an intoxicant to not just include like substances, but also what are those things in our lives that intoxicate us and separate us from reality and from connection to others? You know, maybe it's my attachment to getting like my my next outfit, you know, where I'm just like I'm fixated on things, on objects. I'm intoxicated by objects and making myself appear a certain way. Is there wealth that we're holding on to, that we're attaching to, that is keeping us from recognizing that maybe our wealth is what is separating us from people? That I think that happens a lot in this culture. And then also in terms of harm too, you know, I hope one day that I can give a talk. Oh, I see a great book. Sorry, I'm like, I saw a comment. So thank you, Marie, for putting that comment. There's an excellent book called How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. please read this book. I think you're going to find a lot of interesting ideas that actually really come from, or can come from like a Buddhist perspective. And it talks about, you know, the ways that policies and, you know, our current systems continue racism, even when we're, you know, trying to be good people. So definitely read that book. That's fantastic. Thank you, Marie, for that reminder. So another way that I think that we can work towards racial and social justice is changing the way that we approach harm. So the way that we currently approach harm is through policing and the criminal justice system. And I think that that way that we approach harm today is definitely not Buddhist. And I think, you know, it's ineffective. So currently we approach harm by exiling and separating people. So we arrest people, we put them in prison, and this way of doing that separates them from that connection to their community that not only would help them heal, but would also truly make them accountable for their actions. So I hope to someday give a talk on restorative and transformative justice as alternatives to policing and criminal justice system, because I really think that for us to live in a world that is truly just, we'll have to review how we repair harm. Otherwise, we're going to continue to split from each other, kill each other for the harm that we've received and the harm that we've caused. There's this really excellent story in Old Path White Clouds. I'm sure a lot of you have this. And I was going to read it, but it looks like, of course, this always happens. We're like running low on time. But it's this story of this serial killer, this like mass serial killer, Angulimala. And he's out in the world just slaughtering people, killing people. And the Buddha is in, you know, in this, I'm not sure if he's in a town or he's in like in a forest or something, but he's with, you know, a community of bhikkhus, and he's like going to go out on a walk, and his students are like, dude, please don't leave, because there's this like serial killer on the run in this area, like please don't go outside. And the Buddha's just like, no, I'm going to go on a walk, you know, I'll see y'all later. And so he takes off, he goes on a walk, and Angulimala, this murderer, starts to follow the Buddha, and he's yelling after him. He's like, stop, just chasing after him and telling the Buddha to stop. And the Buddha's just walking slowly in the forest, you know, not being affected. And so Angulimala catches up to him, and he's like, why didn't you stop? And, you know, the Buddha's response is, I stopped a long time ago. It is you who needs to stop. And he really touches, and I think maybe I'll just read this paragraph real quick because I think it's just so important. So the Buddha spoke gently. Angulimala, I know you have suffered deeply at the hands of other humans. Sometimes humans can be most cruel. Such cruelty is the result of ignorance, hatred, desire, and jealousy. But humans can also be understanding and compassionate. Have you ever met a bhikkhu before? Bhikkhus vow to protect the lives of all other beings. They vow to overcome desire, hatred, and ignorance. There are many people, not just bhikkhus, whose lives are based on understanding and love. Angulimala, there may be cruel people in this world, but there are also many kind people. Do not be blinded. My path can transform cruelty into kindness. Hatred is the path you're on now. You should stop. Choose the path of forgiveness, understanding, and love instead. And what I love about how the Buddha responded to this was that he really recognized that those people, Angulimala, that person who was doing harm, has also experienced a lot of harm. So the Buddha validated that Angulimala was doing this because he had received harm from other people. And then he shifted to approach him with compassion. And also notice how the Buddha did not argue with Angulimala about like whether it is okay to kill or not, or he just validated the pain that was at the heart of him wanting to kill, and then showed him connection and kindness. And so I think that's really a fantastic approach, right? We're not going to argue with people about like, you know, whether it's okay to commit genocide. You know, I'm moving into a social justice, you know, path where I would like to work with people who are engaging in white supremacy and to help them, you know, exit white supremacist movements. And I'm not going to argue with them whether it's okay to kill people of color. You know, that's not okay. But what I want to do is that approach that the Buddha took, which is I want to validate the pain that people experience and connect them with generosity and compassion and help them see that they have their own Buddha nature at their core and that they're good at their core. So what do people think? How do you see accountability and you know, this kind of different approach to harm that the Buddha took? How is this going to contribute to a more just world?
I've listened to some of the interviews, particularly around the most recent disaster in Wisconsin. The father of the man who was shot 7 times in the back is actually very articulate, and some other fathers that I've heard their interviews, and their attitude, for lack of a better word, their approach is such strength and compassion for themselves and for others and for the whole situation. It's not like they separate my situation is more awful than your situation, which is more awful than what's going on in France, which is more awful what's going on in, you know, like that. They don't. They see it holistically. They see us as a world. They see us as equal footing, all of us. And so I'm very impressed with some of these interviews where their view, and that comes very much back to Shambhala and very much back to the Buddhist view. Their view is vast. Their view is so vast.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, it sounds like, you know, they're taking their experience of suffering to connect. They're using their experience to connect. So, last couple things. One of the most awesome things for my own personal healing, and I think for, you know, moving forwards with social justice, is recognizing impermanence. So everything that is conditioned is impermanent. That's the first of the 4 seals. So nothing in this culture, including all of our cultural norms, isms like racism, sexism, classism, all of our systems of power are permanent. Nothing is permanent. This means that we have the ability and the responsibility, I believe, to change things, to make it more equitable. So when we, you know, face this incredible situation of, you know, what feels like this total entrenchment of racism in American culture and policing, you know, when we see like this incredible like unfairness around who receives medical care during a pandemic, when we're, you know, directly inhaling the smoke of our incredible, beautiful earth that is sustaining us, and when we face our own kind of feelings of harm, isolation, you know, pain, rage, fear, We have to remind ourselves that nothing in this world is permanent, and it can be changed, and it must be changed. You know, we're in pretty dire circumstances, but none of it is insurmountable, and none of it is inevitable. So we don't have to wallow in this kind of nihilism of hopelessness. And we also don't have to put on rose-colored glasses that kind of shield us from the reality of the moment. I think that this is really, really important. And lastly, my last point combined with that is that we really do have to have faith and hope combined with action. So Lama's teacher, Lama tells a story about where he asked his teacher, what is most important, view, meditation, or action? And his teacher responded, action. So I encourage you, you know, find what actions feel right to you. And also, while you're doing that, recognize that we're planting seeds. So we're planting seeds and watching them grow rather than pulling up the sprouts. So that's something that Lama told me was, you know, I'm so frustrated all the time that things aren't changing, and that they aren't changing right away. And he told me that, you know, you're trying to pull up the sprouts. So I encourage you, while you're finding what actions feel right, recognize that no matter how small that is, you are planting seeds. Recognize interdependence in all that you do. If you're dipping your toes kind of in this idea of abolition and what the world would look like without police and prisons, you can look into groups like Decarcerate SAC. They're a group that's doing work to reduce the prison population in Sacramento and send resources towards community services that would help people have their basic needs met rather than be incarcerated. If you're interested in racial justice, look to groups such as NorCal Resist, who support undocumented folks and immigrants, and also APTP Sacramento, who call for justice for Black people killed by the police. You can also read the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, as Marie said. There's also a ton of other incredible books that can help you examine your place in the world and how to move forward. And if people are interested, please email me and I can send you a list. You can also begin a pen pal correspondence with someone who's incarcerated. This is an incredible way to connect with people who don't receive a lot of connection. If you want to support people who live outside, who are homeless, check in with Sacramento Homeless Union on how you can help. They're a really great group. And also check in with your neighbors. What are your neighbors' needs? And get to know them. How can you support your neighbors? And also engage in electoral politics. I do think that people should vote, but do know that the work must extend beyond that single action. Otherwise, we continue within a very vastly harmful system where sometimes we're just choosing between not great and really not great. So lastly, continue your Dharma practice and your training. Do this with all your heart. Trust that your meditation training paired with compassionate action really is making a difference. Shambhala is not a fantasy. Another world is possible. It is. And we have the power and ability to get there. So thank you so much. I am honored to be with you all today. Dirk says, don't forget the other sentient beings, animals. Yes, absolutely. So maybe if people want to do a quick Q&A or just comment, please comment. It looks like we have some comments in the chat. So I guess I'll read those comments. So Hillary says, I think our relationship to non-human animals shows a type of dysfunctional interdependence. We use them, we depend on them, but we are mostly ignorant of the experience of these animals and their effect on the earth and our lives. But realizing our relationship to other humans is the first step. So I love today's talk. Thank you so much, Hillary. Definitely, I agree with that. And Marie commented also, I love what Cornell West says, you can't lead the people unless you love the people. Absolutely. And then Dirk, his comment about other sentient beings, animals. So thank you, everybody. It truly was an honor to be here. And please feel free to reach out to me if you want to discuss this more. I love talking with people, even like email correspondence. So please reach out. Yeah. All right, Susan, take it off.
Hi. Do we have a time limit? So like we have to end at noon? Because I don't want to cut off if somebody else wants to, make a comment or share a story that might be important.
I don't have a time limit. Yeah.
We'll move to closing prayers, but I don't want to cut it off if others. Okay, we're going to go to closing prayers.
Cool.
And there will be a prayer after this. We're going to do the prayer that saves Sakya after these dedications. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the teachings of the Buddha flourish, and may the upholders of the teachings remain forever. May all migrators achieve happiness, and may they fulfill all their temporary and ultimate goals. Losang, magical display of the deep awareness of all the victorious ones, merciful giver of a stream of profound and vast instructions to the fortunate migrators, please remain always unperishing, unchanging, unfading. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of objectless compassion, Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras, Sankapa, crown jewel of the snowy land sages, Losangdrapa, I make request at your holy feet.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Jackie and Susan.
Okay, we're going to do the prayer that saves Sakya. Is that showing, Dirk?
Yes, sorry about that. I jumped in prematurely.
The verses that save Sakya from sickness, a prayer for pacifying the fear of disease. May all the diseases that disturb the minds of sentient beings and which result from karma and temporary conditions, such as the harms of spirits, illness, and the elements, never occur throughout the realms of this world. May whatever sufferings arise due to life-threatening diseases, which, like a butcher leading an animal to the slaughter, separate the body from the mind in a mere instant, never occur throughout the realms of this world. May all embodied beings always remain unharmed by acute, chronic, and infectious diseases, the mere names of which can inspire the same terror as would be felt in the jaws of Yama, Lord of Death. May the 80,000 classes of harmful obstructors, the 360 evil spirits that harm without warning, the 424 types of diseases, and so forth, never occur throughout the realms of this world. May whatever sufferings arise due to life-threatening diseases which, sorry guys. I'm going to start with this one again. May the 80,000 classes of harmful obstructors, the 360 evil spirits that harm without warning, the 424 types of diseases, and so forth, never cause harm to any embodied being. May whatever sufferings arise due to disturbances in the four elements depriving the body and mind of every pleasure, be totally pacified, and may the body and mind have radiance and power, and be endowed with long life, good health, and well-being. By the compassion of the gurus and the three jewels, the power of the Dakas, Dharma protectors and guardians, and by the strength and the infallibility of karma and its results, may these many dedications and prayers be fulfilled as soon as they are made. Mahum, everybody.
Maham. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you all in person sometime.
Thank you so much for the talk, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie. Omohon.